Maya was having one of those lazy Saturday mornings that feel like a gift. She'd made herself a proper breakfast, the kind she never had time for during the week. Scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee that was actually still hot. Her plan was simple, absolutely nothing. Maybe catch up on that show everyone kept talking about. Maybe take a nap. The possibilities were endless and gloriously unproductive. Then her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. The number showed it was her cousin Jessica, and Jessica only called for 2 reasons: family drama or favors. Maya loved her cousin, but sometimes loving someone and wanting to answer their calls were 2 different things. "Hey Jess, what's up?" The voice that came through was weak and miserable. "Maya, I need help." "Like really need help?" Jessica went on to explain that she'd eaten something bad the night before. Really bad. The kind of food poisoning that makes you best friends with your bathroom floor. And she had a wedding gig in 3 hours. A big one. The kind that paid well and could lead to more bookings. She couldn't lose this client, but she also couldn't stand up without feeling dizzy. "I need you to cover for me," Jessica said, and Maya could hear the desperation in her voice. "Jess, I don't know the first thing about professional photography. It's not regular photography. It's a photo booth. Everything's automatic. You literally just help people pose, press a button, and make sure nobody breaks anything. Please, Maya. I'll owe you forever." Maya looked at her couch, at her comfortable clothes, at the remote control sitting within perfect reach. Then she thought about Jessica, who'd let her crash at her apartment for 2 months when Maya first moved to the city. Who'd talked her through her worst breakup. Who'd never asked for much in return. What time do I need to be there? The wedding venue was the kind of place Maya had only seen in magazines. The hotel downtown with the marble everything and chandeliers that probably cost more than her car. She pulled up in her old sedan, suddenly very aware of the valet parking and the luxury cars lined up like an expensive parade. Jessica had told her to dress nice but not formal. Maya had interpreted that as a simple sundress, the blue one with little flowers that always made her feel pretty. Looking at the guests arriving in their designer outfits and fancy shoes, she realized she might have misunderstood the assignment. The equipment was already set up in a corner of the reception hall. At least she assumed it was set up. There were lights on stands, a camera on a tripod, a backdrop with fake flowers, and a box full of props that looked like it had exploded. Feather boas, oversized sunglasses, silly hats, and signs that said things like "best day ever" and "feeling fancy." Jessica had sent her a text with basic instructions, but reading them in her quiet apartment and actually doing them in this fancy venue were very different experiences. Maya spent the first 20 minutes just trying to turn everything on in the right order. The camera made a concerning beeping noise that she really hoped was normal. The first guests started trickling in as she was still adjusting the lights. A couple in their 60s approached, smiling and already a little tipsy from cocktail hour. "Is this where we take the fun pictures?" the woman asked, giggling. "Yes, absolutely. Just stand right there and pick any props you like." Maya grabbed the camera remote, aimed, and clicked. The flash went off, but she'd somehow cut off the top of the man's head. The second attempt caught their feet instead of their faces. By the third try, they were laughing so hard at her efforts that she actually got a great candid shot, even if it was mostly by accident. "You're doing great, honey," the woman said kindly as they left, which made Maya think she was probably doing terribly, but they were too nice to say so. The next hour was a blur of pressing buttons, adjusting props, and apologizing for technical difficulties that were really just user error. But she was getting better. The camera started to feel less like a complicated spaceship and more like something she could actually operate. She even managed to make a few people laugh with her commentary. "Okay, now look at each other like you just found out you won the lottery. Perfect. Now pretend the person next to you just told the world's worst joke." It was actually kind of fun, watching people drop their formal wedding faces and just be silly for a minute. The booth became this little bubble of permission to be ridiculous, and Maya found herself genuinely enjoying it. Then a little girl appeared at the booth. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, wearing a fancy pink dress with layers of tulle that made her look like a cupcake. Her dark hair was done up in 2 neat braids, and she had big brown eyes that looked both shy and curious at the same time. "Can I take a picture?" the girl asked softly, looking up at Maya. "Of course. Are your parents coming?" The girl glanced over her shoulder. "My daddy's on his phone. He's always on his phone." Maya followed her gaze and spotted a man standing near the entrance of the reception hall. Even from a distance, she could tell he was in a different league than most of the guests. His suit looked expensive, the kind that was definitely tailored just for him. He stood with the posture of someone used to being in charge, phone pressed to his ear, freehand gesturing as he talked. He looked important and stressed in equal measure. "What's your name?" Maya asked the little girl. "Sophie." "Well, Sophie, let's take some really great pictures. Just you. Want to try on some funny glasses?" Sophie's face lit up. For the next 10 minutes, Maya gave this little girl her complete attention. They tried on every silly prop in the box, feather bows and top hats, oversized sunglasses that kept sliding down Sophie's small nose, signs and sparkly wands. Maya made exaggerated poses that made Sophie giggle, and she took picture after picture, not caring if they were perfectly framed. "You're really nice," Sophie said at one point, hugging a fuzzy pink boa. "Most grown-ups don't really play." The comment hit Maya right in the chest. This sweet kid, dressed up for a fancy wedding, just wanted someone to pay attention to her, to play with her, to see her as more than just a small person in the way. "Well, you're really fun," Maya said, adjusting a crooked tiara on Sophie's head. "And playing is important no matter how old you are." That's when the man appeared. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Tall, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair that had silver at the temples, sharp features and blue eyes that looked tired despite how alert they seemed. The kind of handsome that came with power and probably a corner office with a view. "Sophie, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." His voice was clipped, professional, like he was addressing an employee rather than his daughter. Sophie's shoulders dropped a little. "I was taking pictures with Miss Maya," Sophie said quietly. The man glanced at Maya for the first time, really looked at her. His expression was hard to read. Maybe apologetic, maybe just impatient. "Thank you for watching her," he said. "Sophie, we need to find your grandparents. I have to take a call." "But Daddy, we didn't take any pictures together." "Later, sweetheart. This call is important." Maya watched him check his phone again, already half distracted. Something about the whole scene bothered her. This beautiful little girl, clearly desperate for her father's attention, and this man who seemed to have everything except time for his own kid. "It'll just take 2 minutes," Maya found herself saying. Both the man and Sophie looked at her in surprise. Maya was a little surprised at herself, too. "For the pictures." 2 minutes. The man opened his mouth, probably to say no, but Sophie grabbed his hand. "Please, Daddy." 2 minutes? Something in his expression shifted. The hard edges softened just a bit. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and Maya saw the exact moment he couldn't say no. 2 minutes, he agreed. And Sophie squealed with happiness. Maya positioned them in front of the backdrop. The man stood stiff, his hand on Sophie's shoulder, wearing what was probably his business photo smile. It looked painful and fake, and Maya knew these pictures would be terrible. "Okay, that's not going to work," Maya said. "Sophie, whisper something silly in your dad's ear. Like the funniest thing you can think of." Sophie giggled and stood on her tiptoes, cupping her hands around her father's ear. Maya couldn't hear what she said, but she saw the man's expression change. First surprise, then something that looked almost like real laughter trying to break through his serious face. "Sophie, that's ridiculous," he said, but his voice was warmer. "Almost playful, I know," Sophie said proudly. Maya snapped the picture right then, catching the moment. Then another, as Sophie threw her arms around her father's waist, squeezing tight. The man's hand came up automatically to rest on his daughter's head, and his expression held something Maya hadn't seen before. Tenderness, pure and unguarded. "Got it," Maya announced. "Those are going to be great." The man's phone buzzed in his pocket. His jaw tightened. "I really have to take this. Sophie, stay with Grandma, okay?" He was already walking away, phone to his ear again, slipping back into that armor of importance and busyness. But he paused just for a second and looked back at Maya. "Thank you," he said, and this time it sounded genuine. Then he was gone, swallowed up by the crowd and his call. Sophie lingered, watching her father leave. "He's very busy," she said to Maya, like she was explaining or maybe excusing. "His job is really important." Maya knelt down to Sophie's level. "I bet he is busy. But you know what? You're important too. The most important, probably." Sophie smiled, but it was a sad kind of smile that no 7-year-old should have. Then she carefully took off the silly glasses and the feather boa, placing them back in the prop box with surprising care. "Thank you for playing with me," Sophie said formally. like she'd been taught to say. Then she added, quieter, "I wish you were at all the weddings." She walked away before Maya could respond, her pink dress bouncing with each step. Maya watched her go, feeling an unexpected ache in her chest. There was a story there, in that little girl and her distracted father. A sad one, probably. The kind that fancy clothes and expensive venues couldn't hide. The rest of the evening went smoothly. Maya got better with the camera, made people laugh, and only had one minor technical crisis that she managed to solve by turning something off and back on again. But she kept seeing Sophie around the reception, always near her father but never quite with him. He was always on his phone, always talking to someone who wasn't his daughter, always somewhere else even when he was standing right there, and every time Sophie passed the photo booth she'd wave at Maya. Every single time. Like they'd become friends in those few minutes of silliness and attention. When the wedding finally ended and Maya was packing up the equipment, she found the photo strips from Sophie's session. The ones of just Sophie making silly faces were adorable, but the ones with her father were something else. In those few frames, you could see something real. A connection, a moment of actual presence. Maya slipped one of the photo strips into her pocket, telling herself she didn't know why. She'd never see these people again. They lived in a completely different world. Sophie would forget about the nice lady at the photo booth, and her father probably already had. But driving home that night, Maya kept thinking about them. About the little girl who just wanted to play. About the man who seemed to be drowning in his own importance. About how much someone can be physically present but emotionally absent. She wondered if he'd even look at those pictures. If he'd see what she'd seen in that brief moment. A chance to connect. To be there, to be more than just busy. Maya went home to her small apartment, changed into comfortable clothes, and finally sat down on her couch. But she didn't turn on the TV. She just sat there thinking about a little girl in a pink dress and her father who didn't know how to stop working long enough to really see her. It was just a wedding. Just a random Saturday. Just a few hours covering for her cousin. But somehow Maya knew this wasn't the end of the story. Maya thought that would be the end of it. One random Saturday, one sweet little girl, one distracted father. Just a moment in time that would fade into memory like so many other moments do, except it didn't fade. She found herself thinking about Sophie at the strangest times. While making coffee Monday morning, during her lunch break on Tuesday, Wednesday evening while folding laundry, that little girl's voice kept replaying in her head. Most grown-ups don't really play. And that sad smile when she talked about her father being busy. Maya tried to shake it off. She had her own life to worry about. Her actual job as a graphic designer at a small marketing firm kept her plenty busy. They were pitching for a new client that week, something big that could really put their little company on the map. She needed to focus on that, not on strangers she'd met at a wedding. Thursday afternoon, her boss called everyone into the conference room. He was practically bouncing with excitement, which was unusual for a guy who normally had the energy level of a sloth. "We got it," he announced. "The big pitch. They want to hear our ideas next Monday." Everyone cheered. This was huge. The client was some tech company, one of those rapidly growing startups that had become a major player. Landing this account could mean bonuses, maybe even expansion. Maya's boss started talking about the presentation, who would handle what, how they needed to prepare. "They're sending their CEO and a few executives," her boss continued. "So we need to be sharp, professional. This guy is supposed to be brilliant but tough. Doesn't suffer fools." Maya spent the weekend preparing. She refined her designs, practiced her presentation, picked out her most professional outfit, the one that said, "I'm creative but also responsible." She barely thought about the wedding at all. Well, maybe a few times, but mostly she was focused on work. Monday morning arrived with that particular kind of anxiety that feels like butterflies and rocks fighting in your stomach. Maya got to the office early, double-checked everything, made sure the presentation would display correctly. Her hands were actually shaking a little as she poured her third cup of coffee. When the clients arrived, Maya was reviewing her notes in the conference room. She heard voices in the lobby, her boss doing his enthusiastic greeting thing. Then footsteps approaching. She looked up as the door opened and nearly dropped her coffee. It was him, the father from the wedding, Sophie's dad, standing in her conference room in another expensive suit, looking just as surprised as she felt. Their eyes met, and for a second, nobody said anything. Maya's brain had completely stopped working. Of all the people in all the companies in all the city, it had to be him. You, he said. And there was something in his voice she couldn't quite identify. Surprise, obviously, but also maybe recognition, relief. She couldn't tell. Her boss looked confused. You two know each other? We met at a wedding, the man said, still looking at Maya. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. She was the photographer, and very patient with my daughter. Small world, Maya managed to say, finding her voice. Her professional voice, not the squeaky one that wanted to come out. The meeting started and Maya forced herself to focus. She'd worked too hard on this presentation to let surprise derail it. Her boss introduced their team, then the clients. Sophie's father was David Chen, CEO and founder. The name sounded vaguely familiar, probably from tech news articles Maya had skimmed but never fully read. When it was Maya's turn to present, she stood and walked through her designs for their rebranding campaign. She'd created something modern but approachable, professional but not cold. As she talked, she could feel David watching her. Not in a creepy way, but with real attention, the kind of focus he probably hadn't been giving anything at the wedding. I love the color palette, one of the other executives said. It's fresh but still trustworthy. David leaned forward, studying the mock-ups on the screen. Walk me through your thinking on the logo redesign. Maya explained her choices, the psychology behind certain shapes and colors, how it would translate across different media. David asked smart questions, the kind that showed he actually understood design, not just business. The conversation flowed naturally, and Maya found herself relaxing into it. By the end of the presentation, she could tell it had gone well. David's team was nodding, making positive comments, already discussing implementation timelines. Her boss was trying not to grin too widely. We'll need to discuss internally, David said, standing. But I'm impressed with what I've seen. His eyes landed on Maya again. Very impressed. As everyone started gathering their things, David approached Maya. Up close, in the better lighting of the office, she could see he looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well. But he also seemed more present than he had at the wedding, more focused. I have an unusual request, he said quietly, so the others wouldn't hear, and I apologize in advance if this crosses a professional line. Maya's heart started beating faster. Okay. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about you. The nice photo lady. She's asked about you every day since the wedding. He looked almost embarrassed. Her birthday is next Saturday. She wanted me to ask if you'd come. To help with pictures or just to be there, I don't even know. I told her I couldn't just invite someone we barely know, but she was so insistent that I promised I'd at least ask. Of all the things Maya had expected him to say, this wasn't it. Her birthday party? I know it's strange. And you're busy and we're basically strangers. And this is probably completely inappropriate given that we might be working together. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect professional look. But she doesn't ask for much. And she seemed so happy when she talked about you. So I'm asking. There were about 100 reasons to say no. It was weird. They didn't know each other. It blurred professional boundaries. She had plans next Saturday. Okay, she didn't actually have plans, but she could make some up. But she kept thinking about Sophie's face when her father had been on the phone, about how that little girl had carefully put away all the props, so considerate and grown up for someone so young, about that wave every time she passed the photo booth. What time? Maya heard herself say. David blinked like he'd expected her to refuse. 2 o'clock. I can text you the address. He pulled out his phone. And Maya? Thank you. Really. They exchanged numbers, and Maya tried not to think about how strange this all was. Her boss was watching from across the room with obvious curiosity, and she'd definitely have to explain this later. David's colleagues were waiting by the door, probably wondering why their CEO was chatting with the designer. I should go, David said, but we'll be in touch about the contract. Assuming you want to work with us? Of course, Maya said professionally, even though her brain was still processing everything. As they left, one of David's executives, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, lingered behind. He never asks for favors, she said to Maya. In the 10 years I've worked for him, I've never seen him mix business with personal life. Whatever you did at that wedding, it must have really mattered. Then she was gone too, leaving Maya standing in the conference room, wondering what exactly she'd just agreed to. Her boss cornered her immediately. Okay, spill. How do you know David Chen? Maya explained about covering for Jessica, about the photo booth, about Sophie. She left out the part about how David had basically ignored his daughter all evening. That felt too personal to share. Well, this could be great for us, her boss said. If his kid likes you, we're definitely getting the contract. Just don't mess it up. Thanks for the pressure, Maya muttered. The rest of the week felt surreal. On Wednesday, David's company officially hired them. The contract was generous, the timeline reasonable, and there was even a bonus clause if they hit certain milestones. Maya's boss took everyone out for drinks to celebrate, and she tried to feel purely happy about it. But part of her wondered if they'd have gotten the contract anyway, or if Sophie's attachment to her had somehow influenced the decision. Friday evening, David texted her the address for the party. It was in one of those neighborhoods Maya had only driven through, never stopped in. The kind where the houses looked like they belonged in architecture magazines. She spent Friday night debating what to bring. What do you get for a 7-year-old you barely know? She ended up at a store that sold cameras and photo equipment, standing in the aisle feeling completely overwhelmed. Then she saw it, an instant camera designed for kids. Not too expensive, but not cheap either. The kind that printed photos immediately, physical memories she could hold. Perfect. Saturday afternoon, Maya changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a nice top. Casual but not sloppy. She wrapped the camera in bright paper, wrote a card that said, "For capturing all your adventures, Maya," and drove to the address David had sent. The house was exactly as impressive as she'd expected. Modern, all clean lines and big windows, with a lawn that looked professionally maintained. There were already several cars in the driveway, luxury brands she only knew from commercials. Maya sat in her car for a full minute, second-guessing everything. This was crazy. She didn't belong here. These people probably had personal assistants and vacation homes and problems she couldn't even imagine. What was she doing? Then she saw Sophie in the front yard, wearing a sparkly dress and a birthday crown, looking so small against the big house. The little girl was talking to an older woman, probably her grandmother, but her eyes kept darting toward the street like she was watching for someone. Maya got out of the car, gift in hand. The moment Sophie saw her, the little girl's whole face transformed. Pure joy, the kind kids have before they learn to hide their feelings. "Miss Maya, you came, you really came." Sophie was running toward her and Maya barely had time to set down the gift before the little girl crashed into her with a hug. "Of course I came," Maya said, hugging her back. "I wouldn't miss your birthday. Daddy said you probably wouldn't come because you're busy and we don't really know you, but I knew you would." "I just knew it." Over Sophie's head, Maya saw David standing on the front porch watching them. He was wearing jeans and a casual shirt, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. But his expression was complex, layered with emotions she couldn't quite read. Gratitude, definitely, but also something that looked like sadness or maybe longing. He walked down to meet them. "You found it okay?" "GPS is a wonderful thing," Maya said, aware that she was still holding his daughter. Sophie grabbed both their hands. "Come on, I want to show you my room and my art and the cake and everything." She pulled them toward the house, chattering excitedly about the party plans. David caught Maya's eye over his daughter's head, mouthed "thank you," and for a moment they were connected by this little girl and her happiness. Maya had no idea what she was walking into. No idea how this day would change things. She just knew that Sophie's hand in hers felt right, and that sometimes the strangest decisions turn out to be the most important ones. The party was about to begin, and Maya realized she wasn't nervous anymore. She was curious about this family, about their story, about why a successful CEO couldn't seem to put down his phone long enough to really see his own daughter. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today something would shift. Or maybe she was just fooling herself, getting attached to people who lived in a completely different world. Either way, she was here now, and Sophie's smile was worth whatever came next. The inside of David's house was just as impressive as the outside. High ceilings, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a gallery, furniture that was probably worth more than Maya's entire apartment. But what struck her most was how quiet it felt. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet, like a showroom instead of a home. Sophie dragged her through room after room, pointing out everything with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could manage. "This is the living room where we don't really live. This is the dining room where we don't really eat. This is Daddy's office where he's always working. That last comment made David wince. Maya pretended not to notice. Sophie's room was different. It was the only space that felt lived in, with drawings taped to the walls, stuffed animals piled on the bed, and books scattered everywhere. A child's chaos in an adult's perfect house. I made this one at school, Sophie said, showing Maya a painting of what might have been a rainbow, or possibly a very colorful storm. And this one is my family. That's Daddy, and that's me, and that's Mommy in heaven. The drawing showed 3 stick figures, 2 on the ground, 1 floating above with wings and a halo. Maya's throat tightened. David had mentioned at the wedding that Sophie had lost her mother. Seeing it drawn out in crayon made it heartbreakingly real. It's beautiful, Maya said softly. Your mom would be proud of you. Sophie looked at the drawing for a long moment. I don't remember her very much anymore. Just little bits. Daddy says that's okay, that she loved me even if I can't remember everything. David was standing in the doorway, and when Maya glanced at him, she saw raw pain flash across his face before he covered it with a smile. Sophie, sweetheart, our guests are starting to arrive. Should we head downstairs? The party was already in full swing. The backyard had been transformed with decorations, a huge bounce house and tables full of food that looked professionally catered. But as more people arrived, Maya noticed something odd. Most of the guests were adults, business colleagues of David's with their families, all dressed expensively and talking about stock prices and market trends. The kids were there, sure, but they seemed secondary to the networking happening around them. Sophie's grandmother, an elegant woman with silver hair and kind eyes, approached Maya. You must be the famous photo booth lady. Sophie has talked about you nonstop. I'm Maya, and I wasn't famous, just filling in for my cousin. Well, you made quite an impression. I haven't seen Sophie this excited about something in a long time. The grandmother lowered her voice. She doesn't warm up to people easily. Not since we lost her mother. David mentioned that. I'm so sorry. 2 years now. Cancer. It was fast and awful, and Sophie was too young to really understand. David threw himself into work, and Sophie learned to be quieter, smaller, less demanding. She looked at her granddaughter, who was showing some other kids her bounce house. I worry about both of them. They're surviving, but not really living. Before Maya could respond, David's voice came over a microphone. If everyone could gather around, we're going to sing Happy Birthday. The adults clustered around the cake table, phones out to record. Sophie stood next to her massive birthday cake, looking overwhelmed by all the attention. David stood beside her, but even now Maya could see him glancing at his phone, checking messages while his daughter waited to blow out her candles. Something in Maya snapped. She walked straight up to him and held out her hand. Phone, David looked startled. What, give me your phone. Right now. Your daughter is about to blow out her candles, and you're going to be fully present for it, not halfway checking your email. Several people nearby had stopped talking, watching this exchange with interest. David's business face appeared, that professional mask he wore. I'm expecting an important call. I don't care if you're expecting a call from the president. This is more important. Phone, now. For a moment, Maya thought he might refuse. They stood there in a silent standoff. This CEO who ran a successful company, and this graphic designer who had no business telling him what to do. Then Sophie's small voice cut through the tension. Please, Daddy? Just for the cake? David looked at his daughter. Really looked at her, and something in his expression crumbled. He slowly handed Maya his phone. Just for the cake. Just for the cake, Maya agreed, slipping it into her pocket. They sang Happy Birthday, and for those few minutes, David was completely there. No phone, no distractions. Just a father watching his daughter make a wish and blow out 7 candles. Sophie's face glowed with happiness, and when she looked up at her dad, the love in her eyes was so pure it hurt to see. Maya captured it all on her phone, taking pictures without anyone really noticing. These weren't formal posed shots. They were real moments. Sophie laughing. David smiling genuinely for once. The grandmother wiping away tears. The kind of memories that mattered. After the cake was cut and distributed, Maya handed David back his phone. See, the world didn't end. No, he said quietly. It didn't. He looked at the photos Maya had taken on her phone, which she showed him. Can you send me these? Of course. One of David's colleagues approached, a man in his 50s wearing a suit to a child's birthday party. David, I hate to interrupt, but we really need to discuss the quarterly projections. David opened his mouth to agree, and Maya saw Sophie's face fall. The little girl had been reaching for her father's hand, but now she pulled back, resignation settling over her features like she'd expected this all along. "Actually, Tom, it's my daughter's birthday," David said, surprising everyone, including himself. "Can we discuss this Monday?" Tom looked shocked. "Oh, of course. Monday's fine." As the man walked away, Sophie's face transformed again. She grabbed her father's hand, holding tight like she was afraid he might disappear. "Really, Daddy? You're staying?" "I'm staying," he promised and squeezed her hand back. The rest of the party was different after that. David still talked to his guests, still did the host thing, but he kept Sophie nearby. When she wanted to show him something, he stopped his conversation and looked. When she asked him to watch her on the bounce house, he actually stood there and watched, calling out encouragement. Maya observed from the sidelines, helping serve cake and cleaning up stray paper plates. She noticed other people noticing too. The grandmother had tears in her eyes more than once. Some of David's colleagues looked uncomfortable, like they didn't know what to do with this version of their boss who was choosing his daughter over networking. Later, after most guests had left and Sophie was still opening presents with a few remaining kids, David found Maya in the kitchen where she was helping stack dishes. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Which part? Taking your phone or cleaning up?" "Both. Either. All of it." He leaned against the counter looking exhausted and relieved at the same time. "I've been operating on autopilot for so long I forgot how to just be here, present in the moment." Sophie noticed. "I know, and I hate that it took a stranger calling me out to make me see it." He ran his hand through his hair. That gesture she was starting to recognize as his tell for stress or frustration. "I'm not very good at this. Being a single parent, balancing everything. My wife was the one who was good with Sophie, who knew how to make every moment special. I'm just the guy who keeps the lights on and schedules dentist appointments." Maya set down the plates she'd been holding. "Can I tell you something? And you can't get mad because it's your daughter's birthday and I'm technically a guest. That's concerning, but okay. You're so busy surviving that you're missing her childhood. All these important calls and meetings and deals, they matter, sure. But in 10 years, Sophie's not going to remember that you closed a big contract. She's going to remember whether you showed up, whether you saw her, whether you were there." David was quiet for a long moment. "Her mother died on a Tuesday," he said finally. "Regular day, nothing special. We thought we had more time. The doctors said we had more time. We were going to take a family trip, do all these things, but we kept putting it off because work was busy or Sophie had school or there was always something. And then she was gone and we'd missed all of it. All those ordinary moments we thought we'd have forever." His voice cracked on the last word, and Maya saw tears in his eyes that he was fighting to keep from falling. This successful, powerful man who ran a company and made important decisions, crying in his kitchen over the wife he'd lost and the time he couldn't get back. "I'm sorry," Maya said. "That's not fair. None of it is fair. After she died, work became my escape. If I was busy enough, I didn't have to think about the empty side of the bed or the fact that Sophie was asking for her mom and I didn't know what to say. I told myself I was providing for her, securing her future. But really, I was just hiding. You're here now," Maya pointed out. "That's something, because you literally took my phone away." He almost smiled. "I don't think anyone's done that since I was Sophie's age. Someone needed to." They stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and leftover cake, and something shifted between them. Not romantic, not yet. Just recognition. Two people seeing each other clearly, without pretense or professional masks. "Can I ask you something?" David said. "Why did you come today?" "Really? You don't know us." "This is weird. Even you have to admit this is weird." Maya thought about it. At the wedding, Sophie looked at me like I was the only person who really saw her. Not as an inconvenience or an obligation, just as a kid who wanted to play. And I kept thinking about that after, how sometimes the smallest gestures matter the most, how being seen is such a basic need, but so many people go through life invisible. You saw her. Someone needed to do that too. Sophie's voice called from the other room. "Miss Maya, Daddy!" "Come see what I got." They walked back to the living room where Sophie was holding up the instant camera Maya had given her, already snapping photos of everything. Her grandmother, the remaining presents, her own feet. The photos printed out instantly and Sophie waved them in the air to develop, delighted by the magic of it. "This is the best present ever," Sophie announced. She pointed the camera at Maya and David standing together. Smile. The flash went off before either of them was ready. When the photo printed out, it showed them both with surprised expressions, standing close but not touching, caught in an unguarded moment. Sophie studied the photo as it developed. "I'm keeping this one forever," she declared. "It's going right next to my bed." As the last guests finally left and Sophie's grandmother took her upstairs for a bath, David walked Maya to her car. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It had been a long day and Maya was suddenly aware of how tired she was. "Thank you," David said, "for coming. For the camera. For taking my phone. For all of it. You're welcome. Sophie's a special kid. You're lucky to have her." "I know. I just need to remember to act like it." Maya unlocked her car, then paused. "Can I say one more pushy thing before I go? At this point, why stop now? She needs you. Not your money or your big house or your success, just you. The regular dad who watches her blow out candles and listens when she talks about her day. That's all she really wants." David nodded slowly. "I'm going to try. I can't promise I won't mess up again because I probably will, but I'm going to try. That's all anyone can do." As Maya drove away, she checked her rearview mirror and saw David still standing in the driveway, watching her leave. She wondered what he was thinking. If today had really changed anything, or if Monday would come and he'd slip back into his old patterns. But then her phone buzzed with a text. It was from David. "Dinner sometime? Just the three of us. Sophie's already asking when you're coming back, and honestly, so am I." Maya stared at the message, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. This was getting messy. Professional boundaries were already blurred. She worked for his company now. She barely knew him. There were so many reasons to say no. She typed back, "How's next Saturday?" His response came immediately. "Perfect." And just like that, Maya knew she was in trouble. The good kind, maybe, but definitely trouble. Maya spent the entire week overthinking everything. Every text from David felt loaded with meaning she probably imagined. Every time she worked on his company's rebranding project, she wondered if she was crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. Her best friend Rachel finally staged an intervention over coffee Wednesday morning. "You're spiraling," Rachel said, watching Maya check her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. "Just go to dinner, see what happens, and stop creating problems that don't exist yet." But what if I'm reading this wrong? What if he just wants someone to help with Sophie and I'm making it weird by thinking it's something more? Then you'll find out at dinner. Either way, you're helping a sweet kid and spending time with a guy who clearly likes you. Where's the downside? Maya wanted to list all the potential downsides. The professional complications, the fact that David was still grieving his wife, the reality that they came from completely different worlds, the possibility that she was just a convenient solution to his childcare challenges. But Rachel was right. She was creating problems before they existed. Saturday arrived faster than Maya expected. David had suggested a casual restaurant, the kind with crayons for kids and burgers on the menu. Nothing fancy. Maya changed outfits 4 times before settling on jeans and a sweater. Comfortable, not trying too hard. Probably. She met them at the restaurant and Sophie practically tackled her in the parking lot. "You came. I told Daddy you'd come, but he was nervous you might cancel." David looked embarrassed. "Sophie, we talked about filters." "What?" "You were nervous. You checked your phone like 100 times. Maybe 20 times," he admitted, giving Maya a sheepish smile. "But who's counting?" Inside, they got a booth near the back. Sophie sat next to Maya, already chattering about her week at school, a loose tooth that was this close to falling out, and a drawing she'd made specifically for Maya. David sat across from them, and Maya caught him just watching sometimes, with an expression she couldn't quite read. The dinner was surprisingly easy. They ordered burgers and fries, and Sophie entertained them with stories that only made sense to 7-year-olds. Something about a class hamster and a missing pencil and a boy named Tyler who apparently ate paste. David laughed more than Maya had ever seen him laugh, his whole face transforming into something younger and lighter. So Tyler ate the paste? And the teacher said he couldn't have snack time, but then he cried so she gave him crackers instead, which doesn't seem fair because rules are rules. Sophie concluded her story with the serious expression of someone delivering important news. "Life's not always fair, sweetheart," David said. "Sometimes people get crackers even when they eat paste." That's a weird life lesson, Maya said, trying not to laugh. Welcome to parenting. It's all weird life lessons. After dinner, Sophie wanted to go to the park across the street. It was still light out, and the evening was warm enough that other families had the same idea. Kids were running around the playground, parents clustered on benches, that universal weekend scene that happened in parks everywhere. Sophie ran straight for the swings. Push me, push me! David and Maya took turns pushing her higher and higher until Sophie was shrieking with delight. Then she wanted to show them her monkey bar skills, which involved hanging from one bar and declaring herself the strongest girl in the world. David spotted her the whole time, hands ready to catch her even though she never fell. Maya found herself studying them together. The way David's whole body language changed around his daughter, how he was more relaxed here in jeans and a t-shirt pushing his kid on a swing than he ever seemed in his expensive suits running his company. This was the real him, she thought. The one buried under grief and responsibility and the need to keep everything together. Watch this, Sophie called from the top of the slide. She came down with her arms up like she was on a roller coaster, fearless and laughing. She doesn't get that from me, David said. I'm terrified of heights. Her mom was the brave one. It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife voluntarily. Maya didn't know what to say, so she just listened. She would have loved this, David continued, watching Sophie climb back up the ladder. Just a random Saturday at the park. She always said I needed to slow down, to enjoy the small moments. I never really understood what she meant until she was gone, and all I had left were the small moments I'd missed. You're here now, Maya said. That counts for something. Because you keep showing up and making me remember what matters. He looked at her then, really looked at her. Why do you do that? You barely know us. You could have walked away after the wedding, after the birthday party. But you keep coming back. Maya thought about how to answer. My dad worked all the time when I was growing up. Provided everything we needed, but he was never really there. I used to think that was normal, that dads were just supposed to be tired and distant. It wasn't until I was older that I realized what I'd missed, what we'd both missed. She watched Sophie go down the slide again. I see you trying, and I see her needing you. And I guess I want to help make sure you don't miss it, the way my dad missed me. David was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry you went through that. I survived. But Sophie shouldn't have to just survive. She should get to be a kid with a dad who's actually present. Not just physically there, but mentally checked out. No pressure or anything, David said. But he was smiling a little. Just a little pressure. Sophie came running over, breathless and happy. I'm thirsty. Can we get ice cream? We just had dinner, David said. But ice cream is different. It goes in the dessert stomach, which is separate from the dinner stomach. Everyone knows that, David looked at Maya. Is that true? The dessert stomach? Scientifically verified, Maya said with complete fake seriousness. I read a study about it. You're not helping, I'm absolutely helping. Team dessert stomach. They ended up at an ice cream shop, Sophie getting a cone with rainbow sprinkles that immediately started dripping everywhere. David had a napkin ready before Maya could even reach for one, the practiced move of an experienced parent. They sat at a small table outside, and Sophie carefully showed Maya her loose tooth. The tooth fairy is going to come soon, Sophie said. She leaves money under your pillow. Daddy says she leaves $5 now because of inflation. Inflation? Maya asked, amused. David shrugged. When I was a kid, it was a quarter. I'm adjusting for economic changes. You're explaining inflation to a 7-year-old? It's never too early to understand basic economics. Sophie wasn't paying attention to their conversation anymore. She'd spotted a friend from school across the street and was waving enthusiastically. The other girl waved back, and Sophie turned to her father with pleading eyes. Can I go say hi? Please, just for a minute? David looked at the girl's parents, who were right there watching their daughter. Stay where I can see you. 1 minute. Sophie ran off, and suddenly it was just Maya and David at the small table watching their ice cream melt. The moment felt different without Sophie's energy filling all the spaces. This is nice, David said. Normal. I haven't felt normal in a long time. What does normal feel like? Like maybe the world isn't ending. Like maybe there's a future that isn't just work and responsibility and trying not to fall apart. He paused. Like maybe I could be happy again without feeling guilty about it. There it was. The real complication. Maya had been so focused on whether her feelings were appropriate that she hadn't fully considered his. A man who'd lost his wife 2 years ago, who probably felt like moving forward was somehow betraying her memory. Your wife would want you to be happy, Maya said gently. If she loved you and Sophie, she'd want both of you to live, not just exist. Logically, I know that. But grief isn't logical. Some days I'm fine, and some days I feel guilty for being fine. Some days I forget she's gone for a few minutes. And then remembering feels like losing her all over again. He looked at Maya. And then you showed up. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt something other than grief or responsibility, and that terrifies me. Maya's heart was doing that complicated thing again. What do you feel? Like maybe I'm allowed to want something for myself. Like maybe it's okay to look forward to Saturday dinner at a mediocre restaurant because you'll be there. Like maybe letting someone new into our life doesn't mean I loved my wife any less. Before Maya could respond, Sophie came running back, out of breath. Lucy wants to know if I can have a play date tomorrow. Can I, Daddy, please? David pulled out his phone to check his calendar, then stopped himself. He put the phone away. Let me talk to her parents and we'll figure it out. Sophie beamed. You didn't check your work schedule first. No, I didn't. That's good. You're getting better at this. David caught Maya's eye over Sophie's head and they both smiled. Getting better at this. It was progress, even if it was slow. They walked back to the parking lot as the sun set completely, streetlights flickering on. Sophie held both their hands, swinging between them, singing a song she'd learned at school that was mostly just the same 3 words repeated over and over. She was tired but happy, the kind of exhausted that came from a good day. At Maya's car, David hesitated. Sophie had run ahead to look at something in a shop window. Can I see you again? He asked. Not just dinner with Sophie, though I love that too. But maybe just us? Coffee or lunch or something? Maya's practical side started listing all the reasons this was complicated. Her heart told her practical side to shut up. I'd like that, she said. Even though I come with a lot of baggage, a demanding job, a daughter who needs stability, a life that's kind of a mess. Everyone has baggage. At least yours is cute and likes ice cream. David laughed, really laughed, and Maya realized how much she liked that sound. How much she wanted to keep hearing it. Sophie came running back. I saw a stuffed turtle in the window. Daddy, can I have a turtle? A real one, not stuffed? We'll discuss the turtle situation later, David said diplomatically. That's parent code for no, Sophie informed Maya seriously. Probably, Maya agreed. Sophie hugged Maya goodbye, holding on longer than expected. You're going to come back, right? You're not going to disappear? The question hit harder than it should have. This little girl who'd already lost her mother, asking for reassurance that the adults in her life would stay. I'm not going anywhere, Maya promised, hoping it was a promise she could keep. Driving home, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from David. Tuesday lunch? I know a place with terrible coffee and excellent sandwiches. She smiled, typing back quickly. Sounds perfect. Rachel called as Maya was getting ready for bed. So, how was it? Complicated, Maya admitted. But good complicated, maybe. You like him, I like both of them. That's the problem. If this doesn't work out, I'm not just losing him. I'm losing Sophie too. And if you don't try, you'll always wonder what if, Rachel pointed out. Sometimes the scary thing is the right thing. After they hung up, Maya lay in bed thinking about David's question. Why did she keep coming back?